Okay, we're now recording. So we are going to start today's class by just making sure we understood those 12 appraisal methods that we did last time, since that was really, really critical. So last time we pretty much finished by talking about all of these. And I said we're going to do an exercise to make sure we review them, and then we will go on. I think what we can do, since I'm still waiting for people to join, is rather than doing that, let's do a different case study first. And then we'll finish the chapter, and then we'll go back and review those. So let's try a different case study first. And this case study is appraising the secretary. So let me put it into the chat now. Okay, it is in the chat now. So what I'd like you to do, if you haven't already, you don't have it yet, please download it. And what I'm really going to talk about just is question number 3. So it's a little bit of a longer read. You know, it's maybe 4, it's 4 paragraphs. Oh, no, it's pretty long. It's 1 full page. So take a look at that, and then let's talk about it. Once you finished reading it, I'm going to put you guys in groups, and I'd like you to discuss a little bit just the question of really of what should this guy Rob Winchester do? What sort of appraisal system should he use? That's what I'd like to know.
Like methods.
So can you guys tell me first, what's the problem here?
You're
well,
giving
first,
like, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that first, the problem was that too many managers would just rate their secretaries as excellent because they didn't give it that much thought. And now the problem with the method they've been using is that there's been a lot of turnover since the way they were rated or appraised directly affected their bonuses.
All right. And so what was his first solution?
I think it was something like a forced distribution method.
Similar. Forced distribution is for a large group of people, but it's a ranking method, some kind of ranking method. You know, it sounds like alternation ranking, but okay. And did that work?
No.
No. Constance, why didn't that work?
I forgot.
Was it because some like employees thought it was unfair not to get like the maximum increase, and some could get it and some couldn't?
Sure. So the secretaries were angry because they didn't get the maximum increase, and the administrators were frustrated too because this wasn't good for them. You know, they're the messenger. They get blamed for being honest. So, okay, it looks like the ranking system maybe isn't going to work. And that's where they are now. Then he asked these business guys to come and give him some advice. And, you know, the question is, should he take that advice or what should he do? So please discuss that. And I will come back after.
I think if the issue is fairness, maybe we could go with like the essay evaluations.
Yeah, I think so. What do you think, bro?
So can I ask you guys before you get deep into it, what's the problem?
All the employees, like the secretarians, are qualified as excellent.
So what's wrong? Just tell everybody they're excellent. That's good, right?
Yeah, but if they're not.
Yeah, but so what? They all get a big raise.
The turnover is too high, or
Why would the
Oh,
turnover be high if everybody's
the
getting a
turnover is
raise?
very little. Yeah. You can't give everybody a
everything's good.
raise.
Why
You
not?
can't give everybody a raise. That's what they said, no? That they don't have any more budget?
Okay.
Yeah.
So the system, nobody had a big problem when they had the budget for it. I mean, there's still problems with just saying everybody's excellent. Sometimes someone who's not excellent kind of falls through the cracks and they just stay there, and that happens. But aside from that, they were okay, but now they don't have the money to do that. So what was Rob Winchester's first solution?
Well, he relied on the already existing method of evaluation, which was frankly not suitable for something that you measure quantitatively,
Okay.
because it was basically not defined. They say here it's excellent, well
The
done work,
graphic
quality of
rating
work.
form.
So, okay, so that wasn't really working then because everybody would just choose excellent. So
Yeah.
then what was his next solution?
Well, he sought out the help of the
Before that,
before that.
he tried something else.
Oh yeah, he encouraged them to evaluate harshly, right?
Well, I think in the second paragraph, it talks about how he sent a memo saying that no more than half the secretaries could be appraised as excellent. This isn't encouragement. This is a rule. This is a must. You know, and that means everybody, this in effect forced each supervisor to begin ranking the secretaries. That I think was his solution, was we'll rank people. But there was a problem with ranking. Jody, what's the problem with ranking?
Yeah, the problem is that the one that
I don't understand.
the
Didn't you guys
appraisal with-
just read this? How do
Somebody
you, Jody,
Yeah.
how do you not?
somebody
They
came
were
out
afraid
and
that
bought him. Yeah.
because the appraisal of the excellent and quality of work.
No, I don't really understand what you're saying. Did you guys not read this? I'm a little confused what's happening here.
I just read it because I just came in
Okay.
like very fast.
I mean, I just read it. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Well,
figure
basi-
out what the problem
read
was
it as
and the
well.
solution, and then I will come back.
Bars, I think.
Yeah, I
Bars?
think bars would be also good. Like because paired comparison method, it takes long time, right? So it might not be effective. But bars, yeah, because bars is giving number, right? Quantitative.
Yeah, who's first
Um,
and third.
it tells
Yes.
us. Is it like telling the
Can I
story?
interrupt
Hi.
the question?
Mhm.
The question is, what was wrong with his, why can't they just continue to give everybody an excellent rating?
Because there's no universal definition of, like, they used the graphing rating scale method, right, sir?
So what was wrong with that?
There's no universal definition of like what's good, or like, I mean, giving excellent everyone, it does mean that they're all good at it. Like everyone's opinion is different, and like
Yeah.
Okay.
And as far I understood, like it was because the managers was trying to resolve the problem with turnover. So I think at
Well,
the beginning,
there was no big problem. There wasn't a turnover problem at the beginning. Everybody got a big bonus every year and everything was fine, except they ran out of
before
money.
this. Yeah, but before this, somewhere it's saying here like the some of secretaries leave the company because they think the salary was not good.
Well, I think that is, you're getting a little confused. First, everything was okay, and Rob had a new assignment. And his assignment is find out which secretaries are good. The first assignment wasn't about money at all. It was just find out which secretaries are good. And part of the reason was now they didn't have enough money to give everybody the bonus. So then Rob, his solution was to tell the administrators, you cannot make everybody good. He said no more than half of the secretaries could be considered excellent. And this, in effect, this created a ranking system. Now, it wasn't an alternation rank. The boss didn't say, I need to know who's number 5, who's number 6, who's number 7. The boss didn't say that. He just said no more than half can be excellent, which essentially makes a ranking of two things, above excellent and below excellent. I mean, that's it. That's the ranking it created. And then they started to have a turnover problem. That's when the problem happened, because a lot of secretaries said this isn't fair. And they started to quit because they can make more money in the private industry. So that wasn't going to work. And so he got this advice from the business experts. And then the question is, should he take this advice, or what should he do? So I heard you guys talking about bars.
Yes.
Why would that be useful?
Because this is more general. There's many information, you know, about the behavior of the secretary, so we could have more clear definition of what's good and what's not
it kind
good.
of tells the story. It's like giving the specific examples of good and poor performance, so it can be more accurate. It will be more
Chandra
objective.
also said, which one you said before?
Paired,
Also
the paired comparison method. Yeah, like every employee can be paired and compared with their each trait. So it can be useful, but it takes so long time. So it can be quite burdensome. Bars,
I think,
or like critical incident method, I remember.
Yeah, the good at bars is more general, because I think if we have a small group, Chandra's option would be better than bars. But it's around 250 secretaries, so it's
I think bars would be good.
Too high.
Yeah.
Objective as well.
Yeah, with all the scale is more, because it's a quantitative and qualitative, like combination of them. So
did it say it's 250 secretaries? Oh yeah, they're 250. You're right.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, that's good. Let's leave the breakout rooms and talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk a little about these appraisals. So we understand that he can't use the original form he was using. What's the name of the original kind of appraisal system he was using?
Alternative ranking method?
The original one, the first one.
Was it the graphic rating forms?
Correct. He was using the graphic rating scale. And that was just a piece of paper that says, you know, below average, average, excellent, and lists many, many, many different traits. And managers, that's very easy to use. And managers, of course, would just circle excellent, you know, because then all their secretaries would get a good salary increase. Now, this didn't work anymore for two reasons. One, Rob's boss said, I'd actually like to know who's good and who's not. With the problem with everybody circling excellent, you don't even know who's good. Some people really aren't good. Some people really are great, and it's not fair. So that's one problem. And then the other problem is they don't have the money to give everybody this big bonus every year. So Rob's first solution was to force all the managers to say only half of your secretaries can be excellent. And this created sort of a ranking system. It wasn't alternation ranking. The boss didn't say, I need to know, because it's 250 secretaries. The boss didn't say, I need to know who's number 178, who's number 179, who's number 180, who's number one. The boss didn't say that. He just said, you got to put them in two groups, excellent and not excellent. And that's sort of a rank. And that didn't work, of course, because people started to quit. They weren't happy with this. And so at that point, Rob asked you for help, right? He asked these business managers for help. They came and said, there are two big problems. One big problem is in your graphic rating scale, there's no global standard for what a 3 is, or what a 5 is, or what good means, or what excellent means. There's no standard. That's one problem. And the other problem is it should not be tied to the salary. So let's address that first. Chloe, do you agree that this evaluation of performance should not be tied to salary?
Completely.
Well, then what's the point of having an evaluation?
I think the evaluation should help people to get to know at what they're good at and what they can improve. If the job fits them well, and if they do excellent work every time for a long time, they can get like a bonus salary or whatever. But it's not because you're doing a good job that every time you should get more money.
Well, then what are we going to give people more money for? What's our basis for giving people a promotion or a raise if it's not your job performance?
No, you can get promotion or like have more responsibilities or stuff like that, but not all the time you should get more money.
Okay, except maybe a cost of living increase. Everybody should get that. Bella, do you agree?
Well, I think if some employees are going to be getting a raise, then I believe evaluation is the most effective way to decide on which, like, who is going to get it and who is not.
I mean, we need to decide who gets the raise and who doesn't. We have to decide somehow. Constance, how are we going to decide?
We were thinking about the like the paired method.
Which method?
Wait. The paired comparison like method.
Okay, a paired comparison method. And what would be the purpose of that?
The problem is like they also had a high turnover because the employees didn't understood why some were getting a raise and some not. So
okay, you make a very important point there, that one of the big problems is that the secretaries didn't know why some of them were getting a raise and some were not. That's a good point. What's going to be the problem, Chandra, of doing a paired comparison method here?
It'll take so long time to compare each employees. It will take a long time.
If we were talking about 25 people, I could see it. You know, I think it's a good plan, but with 250, that's going to be a lot. So with 250 people, on the one hand, we want to appraise them because we want to know who's doing a good job and a bad job. But if it's about money, then all the managers are tempted to just say excellent. So again, what do we do? Christine, any thoughts?
We do the bars, the behavior anchored rating scale.
Okay, so that's like a graphic scale, but it's got a much more clear explanation of what, you know, 5 out of 10 is, or 7 out of 10, or 3 out of 10. It's much more clear. So how does that help us? Wouldn't the managers still just choose 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, and so everybody gets a bonus?
That is true.
I mean, bars makes it clear. It definitely makes it clear. And that's one of the big problems that the business people said. They said a problem is you don't have a clarity on what excellent means. So you're right, bars would fix that. I don't know if it fixed the problem though, which is that the managers would still be tempted to give everybody a high score.
And what if we do the 360-degree feedback? Like other people need to give their opinion about the person. So not only the manager is involved anymore.
Well, if all the secretaries are going to get bonuses based on this, and let's say all of us are secretaries and our bonus is based on this, and if we're using 360-degree feedback, some of the feedback will come from our managers. Their temptation is to give us all a high rating. Some of it would come from peer review. Now, Chloe, I'm just going to meet you for lunch and say, hey, listen, I'll give you an excellent score if you give me an excellent score. And we're all going to give each other excellent scores. Any other suggestions? I mean, these are all good ideas. We want to think outside the box a little bit. Jonathan. What? Sorry, someone had a thought?
What about the forced choice? Because they don't know like which one is the they cannot have a bias because they don't know which one has a high rating or not.
Like I think there's something there, because we have a problem, and part of the problem is the managers themselves. It's not just that we need to change the form that they use. We need to make sure the managers are somehow incentivized to be honest. Right now, they have no incentive to be honest. So one thing we could do is use either a forced choice or a weighted checklist. I might even say a weighted checklist is better, so that the managers, they don't really know what we're looking for. And so they can't determine how to give everybody an excellent rating. That would be a solution. I think another solution definitely is the secretaries, because part of the problem here is that I think the business experts did not cover because they are not HR experts. And these are some of the things we're going to talk about today, and we've touched on before. Would it be fair for me to give you guys grades in my class and say, hey guys, I gave you grades on the midterm, but you can't ask me why? This person got a 70, this person got an 80, this person got a 90, but you can't ask me why. How would that make you feel? Well, I guess if you got the 90, you'd feel okay. But if you got the 70 and you wanted to know why you didn't get the 80, there'd be a problem. So one of the big problems here is they're appraising the secretaries without talking to the secretaries about it. You know, they're saying a secretary is excellent or not excellent without sitting down with the secretary. The secretaries don't have what's called procedural justice. They don't know why they're getting these scores. So I think that's a really important point. Now, the last thing is, if we didn't tie the rating to their salary increase, something must determine their salary increase. What should it be if it's not this appraisal? It's got to be something.
Maybe job output. So if there's a measurable uptick in performance in their area, then they'll get the raise. Because I mean, a rating is just an opinion, but like there's other criteria that their job can be quantified with.
So I like that idea. The only concern I would have is that's going to lead to people rushing to increase output, maybe at the expense of quality. But I like where you're headed with this. And what I would probably say would be MBO, management by objectives. So I agree with you, we could set goals. And part of the goal could be output quantity. Part of the goal could be output quality. Part of the goal could be the rating. Part of the goal could be customer or other people's satisfaction. Part of the goal could be attitude. Part of the goal could be coming on time. There's a variety of goals we could sit down. I mean, that really is the best way. And it does take time. But the advantage, and this really gets us back to the beginning of this chapter. As I said, to me, this is in some ways the most important chapter. Right at the beginning of this chapter, remember, this chapter is not called appraisals or evaluations. This chapter is called performance management. Appraisal is an element, a key element, but just an element of the system of performance management. And part of that system of performance management involves the alignment of goals. So right at the beginning, we talked about performance management. What was the purpose of a performance management system? The purpose was to use every employee's skills, knowledge, and interest. Use it to do what? What are we trying to use it for? We talked about a lot of different objectives. We're trying to use this. One reason is compensation, but there's lots of other reasons we would want to use a performance management system. Ultimately, it's because we want to align performance with the organization's goals. And that's really what we need to remember, that this idea of payment is only one aspect of what's making our employees unhappy. Right now, their evaluation is tied to payment. But there's so much more going on than payment. There are things like training, development, the chance of promotion, career planning. There's so much more we could help these secretaries with. And right now we're not. Right now we're giving them an appraisal and paying them based on that, and that's it. We do need to give them an appraisal, but it has to be incentivized so that the managers have a reason to give them a good appraisal. I would say something I would add is that the manager's appraisal would also depend on how they evaluated their secretaries. If they evaluated fairly, that would help determine the manager's chance of getting a raise or a promotion. So the managers should be incentivized, and the secretaries should be given meetings with HR where they discuss the goals. Then we see in the last 6 months or year, have they met their goal? And the appraisal is just part of a larger system that is meant ultimately to give us good performance. It's not just speed, it's not just quality, it's also attitude. It's all kinds of things that give us good performance. So there's a lot going on that we could deal with. Okay, moving on. Okay, so the next thing to talk about in this subject is responsibilities. So in HR, what do we have to do with this evaluation thing? We're not the managers. We don't even know some of these employees. There's 250 secretaries. We don't know these secretaries. We're not the ones who have to sit down and say if they're doing a good job. We don't know. We're in HR. We're on the other side of this university. So our job is not to appraise people much of the time. Our job is generally to choose the method. We choose the method and we design the form. Those are the two big things that we do. But we don't actually conduct the appraisal. That's what the manager does. But here's the problem. The manager doesn't necessarily know how. Who taught the manager to appraise people? If you didn't take an HR class, you might never have even really thought about this in any detail, how incredibly important it is for your business or organization to know who's doing a good job or a bad job, and to make sure their goals are aligned with the organization's goals. So in addition to choosing the method and creating the form, we also have to get the manager ready for the meeting. That's also part of our job, is we meet with the managers. We make sure they understand how to run this meeting, because we are the ones who monitor the performance management system. And part of that is having good evaluations. But a big problem at this university is Rob Winchester could make the best forms in the world. If the managers don't understand how to appraise, well, then that's going to be a really big problem. Another thing we teach managers to do is we teach managers the difference between coaching and counseling. And managers, because we're the ones in HR who run the trainings, we have to train managers to understand. It cannot be expected that a manager just understands a lot of these things about management. Usually managers are given the job because they were very good at what they did. I think I told you once before an example when I did a training for the company Volvo, the car company, where one of their big problems is they were promoting people who were good engineers to become manager, right? They would give a performance evaluation, and there was one guy, for example, who was a great engineer for 5 years at Volvo, a Chinese guy. So they promoted him to manager. Well, he was a terrible manager. He liked to work alone at a very clean desk. He was very shy. He was very uncomfortable around other people. He definitely didn't want conflict. He didn't want to give people orders. He wasn't suited at all to be a manager. And that doesn't mean he shouldn't be. It means he wasn't being trained. And that's HR's job. So the manager has to make sure for coaching, coaching is day to day. Coaching is not like, okay, let's meet and sit down for lunch, or let's meet in my office. Coaching is sort of a day-to-day thing. It's how you learn on the job from a manager. So the manager has to understand for coaching that the employees should all know what is expected of them. The employees should have the opportunity to use their skills. The employees should know what the manager thinks of their performance. If an employee doesn't know how the managers feel about their performance, not about them as people, but about their performance, then there's a problem. That's the manager's fault. Employees should know where to go for assistance if there's a problem. You can't always talk to the manager, either because the problem is about the manager or because the manager is not available. You need to make sure that the employees actually do receive assistance. And then also that their reward is based on job performance. Doesn't matter if we use a ranking, a rating, MBO, critical appraisal, self-evaluation, whatever we use, we need to reward people based on their performance, or else we start running into the problem of the expectancy paradigm, or the expectancy theory of motivation. And if you studied organizational behavior with me or with anybody, you would have learned about the expectancy theory, which says that the first rule of motivation is that if you work harder, you should achieve more. And if you did achieve more, you should get something. And that should be something that you want. Without those key relationships, there's no reason to work harder. I knew, so one time I had studied law in Beijing. I might have told you this story, but I studied law in Beijing, and the teacher pretty much said, everybody's going to get an A. So what happened then? Well, you pretty much had two different groups of people. One group continued studying hard because they wanted to learn. One group stopped coming to class. Because why bother? There's no point. We're going to get an A. And they did get an A. It made no difference, because telling somebody you're going to get an excellent rating, it removes motivation for the large amount of people. Some people are just high achievers and they will work hard no matter what. Most people no. Most people, they do need to be incentivized. There's nothing wrong with that. So rewards need to be based on job performance. Employees need to know all of this, and they don't learn it from us in HR. They learn it from the manager, but it's our job to teach this to the manager. So we need to teach the managers how to set goals and objectives. That's a huge, critical thing. Why are all these managers in this university, Sweetwater U, why aren't they appraising their secretaries based on goals? They probably don't know how. Where would they have learned this? There's no reason that people know this. To provide ongoing feedback, really critical. So many managers don't do this. They only talk to you when there's a problem. And this is a really big issue. As we said, to be able to provide assistance, motivation, like I said, and when I say motivation, I do not mean saying, oh man, you're so good. You guys did a great job. I'm really proud of you. That is not what I mean by motivation. What I mean is, if you work hard, you achieve more so you get a reward, and the reward is something you want. It's very practical. It's not meant to be stroking, is what it's called, when you just tell somebody they're doing a great job, just like a cat, just saying, oh, you guys are so good. That is a form of intrinsic motivation, but that's not really what motivation is about. You need to see that there's a benefit. That's one of the reasons school is hard, because you guys could get really good grades and most people would not necessarily understand how that's going to affect your future. What's the difference between getting a 4.0 and a 3.5 and a 3.0? I mean, it's not the only thing that matters, certainly. I know a lot of people who got good grades and didn't get, big paying jobs. And I know people who didn't get good grades and have great jobs. And that's not really what matters. But even the people who didn't get good grades were still very motivated. And I know people who got great grades and went to wonderful schools, but they weren't motivated. They were motivated to learn. They weren't motivated to work. There's all kinds of motivation. Supportive, again, by supportive, I do not mean stroking and telling somebody they're doing a great job and encouraging them. I mean a working relationship where real support is provided. And that has a lot to do with trust, right? Trust, you need trust for growth and development to some extent. If you don't trust your manager, you're not going to listen to them. You're not going to be able to take what they say seriously. And if you have a problem, you're not going to be able to talk to them. One of the biggest problems across the board in HR in China is when workers have problems, they do not go to their managers. And then the managers don't know there's a problem. And in a lot of ways, this is known as face, right? Everybody knows guanxi or lian or diulian or, face, but it's not just face, because people in China do talk to people they trust. Certainly, everybody does in human society. It's a real lack of trust. And that's critical to teach managers how to do that. Now, what's the difference between coaching and counseling? Counseling is based on a specific work-related issue. Counseling is where a manager would say, listen, can you please come into my office today at 3 o'clock? I need to talk to you. This isn't day-to-day. And again, in HR, it's our job to teach this to managers. We expect managers to just be good coaches, but sometimes they need to have a meeting with an employee, and it's our job to teach them how to help the employee to change their behavior or to review the consequences of their actions, something a lot of managers don't do. There's two kinds of counseling, directive and non-directive. So directive counseling is specific, right? With directive counseling, it could be preventative, it could be corrective. What's the difference, Christine, between preventative and corrective?
Preventative is like before it actually happens.
Sure.
And if is, yeah, you correct, like you I don't know, stop what, do you correct the job like while it's happening?
Sure.
While you're doing.
So reviewing consequences is really important for prevention. Being able to sit down with employees and say, listen, you didn't do anything wrong, but I'd just like to talk about the consequences of what happens if you don't work on this project, or this doesn't go well, or, we just need to make sure everybody's really clear. And the consequences of doing a great job are that you will get a promotion or you'll get a raise. Everybody should know the consequences of underperformance or overperformance. And directive counseling is specific, and the manager really will control most of the communication. It's not an open back and forth dialogue. Generally, you're going to see this for punishments, when the manager needs to sit down and say, listen, we have a problem. Let me explain the situation to you. And you don't have a chance to talk, really. It's the manager telling you what's going on. Then there's non-directive. And non-directive is more of a back and forth. If I said, okay, recently one of my employees has started coming late and taking a very long lunch, and I'm not trying to yell at the employee. I come in and I say, listen, tell me what's going on. And then the employee has more freedom to express themselves for non-directive. But of course, the employee must be willing to change. So here for non-directive, there's 3 elements. 1, the manager will say, here are the facts. In the last 2 weeks, you've come late 6 times. In the last 2 weeks, 3 times you took a long lunch. 2 times customers said that they got the wrong order. Those are the facts. Now, let's talk about what's going on. Things that you're not working as well as you used to, and then you tell me what's going on and we try to solve the problem. Again, trust is required, but that's for non-directive. So an example, Nick has been with his organization for 3 years. Over the past several weeks, the work has started to decline. Nick has shown up late. He's missed an important deadline. He's submitted a report with several errors. Up until now, his work was outstanding. John, Nick's manager, has spoken to Nick about the lateness, but not about the missed meeting or the mistakes in the report. And John doesn't know quite how to proceed. So John's a manager, and he comes to your office because you are HR. So what advice would you give him, Anais?
What advice would I give Nick? Or
No,
John?
you don't have to deal with Nick. Nick's not your employee. You're HR. You have staff authority. You can't tell Nick what to do. John is the manager, and John comes to your HR office and says, listen, I told Nick he was late. I told him to stop, but everything's falling apart with his work. I have no idea what to do.
Well, I think at this point it's to reprimand him. I think that's the only way to go, since John has told him to stop coming in late and to do his job better.
To reprimand him?
Mm-hmm.
What if the reason that his work is declining is because his child is very sick?
I think that's something that should have been discussed with his manager ahead of time.
Do you think reprimanding him would be an effective way to deal with this?
In this case, if his son was sick, no. But if it's unjustified and it's continuous, then yeah.
Okay, Camila, do you agree? Would you take Anais's suggestion?
I'm not sure.
If you were Nick's manager, what do you think you might want to do? Or if you were HR advising Nick's manager, what advice would you give?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure for this one.
Well, what about what we just learned?
Do maybe non-directive counseling, because they can talk about the facts. Like if he has a sick child, they can talk about it. They can discuss and fix the problem together. See what they can do.
Okay, so I mean that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for an answer, because we don't know. We don't know what Nick's problem is, and we can't say, "Hey, Nick, come into come in, Nick, come into Camila's office. I know you've never met her before. Tell her about your sick child. And we can't do that. He doesn't know you. There's no trust here. He knows his boss, John. So we could tell John, listen, there's coaching and there's counseling. This sounds like it's already too late to be preventive. So now we need to do some counseling. There's two kinds of counseling, directive and non-directive. In this situation, because you don't know what the problem is, but Nick used to be excellent, we recommend non-directive counseling. There's 3 steps. Number 1, present the facts to Nick. Number 2, discuss with Nick the problem. And number 3, have a problem-solving meeting. Then give Nick 2 weeks and see if things change. If not, come back to HR and we'll talk about it again. That's, a reasonable thing for us to do in HR, because it's not our job to tell, we don't know what the problem is with Nick.
Sir, I have a question. Do you think would it make any sense if I say that the employee, Nick, can do the critical incident method, like writing what happened, like compile all the incident, in a year, so we can see what affect his low work performance, and just like see all the past record? Would it make sense?
I think that's an interesting idea. I think the problem is we would have needed to start that months ago.
Okay.
If he's already been late a few times, and his work was here and now it's gone down to here, and we say, Nick, now start keeping a journal. I mean, the better thing would have been to keep a journal 6 months ago and discover what led to this. It's just like they say with a lot of things, you can't only do stuff. You can't only go to the gym when you feel bad, or only eat healthy when you feel bad. To be preventative, you have to do it when you feel good too. So one thing that we do as managers is HR. One thing that we do as HR is we get the managers ready for all of their meetings with the employees. We teach them about coaching and counseling. We teach them about how to be effective goal setters. There's a whole other thing we do in HR, which is create these forms. Now, we already understand the different, or at least 12 different kinds of forms that we can create, but we need to understand a little bit more about these forms. So one thing is, what's the purpose of these forms? Because we're going to have to teach this to the managers. So one thing is to highlight the employee's performance. But what does that mean to highlight it? To find out what's good. And here's the key idea: in relation to goals and objectives. That's a big problem with these secretaries in Sweetwater University. The manager is saying, are they excellent or good or mediocre or satisfactory? In relation to what? Compared to what? Are you excellent compared to you? Yes. Are you a good Camila? Yes, you're the best Camila. Are you a good Christine Caranto? Yes, you're the best Christine Caranto. What are we comparing? There's no comparison here. Is Christine better than Camila? What does that mean? Now, once we start comparing two people, what does better mean? It's funny, I just met a guy last weekend. He was a friend of a friend, and he's a young guy. He's 20. He's just about to graduate Carnegie Mellon University, which is a university in America, with a chemical engineering degree. And he called me up. We'd met, he was interested in law. And so I was speaking to him, and he said, recently, David, one of my friends told me I'm going to be successful. Do you think I'm going to be successful? And I said, compared to what? I think you're going to be a very successful boy who's 20 years old, who's about to graduate from college. I don't even know what you're comparing yourself to. If you're comparing yourself to Bill Gates, I'm sorry to say, maybe you won't be successful. I don't know what you mean by success. We have to compare something to something. And that's a big problem with the secretaries here. The managers are giving them an excellent, but based on nothing. So we need to have goals and objectives. That's such a critical idea in performance management. Once we have goals and objectives, then we can talk about what requires improvement. And it's really important for us to agree on methods for improvement. You know, telling Nick, hey, you've been late 4 times. If you're late again, you're in trouble. A lot of managers do things like that because they were not taught by HR that that's not effective. What would be more effective is to say to Nick, you have been late and that requires improvement. Let's agree on a method. What's the problem? Is it the bus is late or the train is late, or what's the problem? Your alarm clock is broken, you can't wake up. Let's talk about methods. If the manager doesn't know what to do, they should come back to HR, because we are specialists in humans. We are human resource managers. If you go into HR, what it means is you specialize in humans at work, which is a huge part of humans' life. We don't specialize in divorce and marriage. We don't specialize in raising children, although that is part of work. We specialize in humans at work. That's what we do. We need to establish new goals to be met by the next performance management. You know, this is the purpose of these forms. The purpose is not just to pay people more or less. It's much more about goals and objectives. And did you meet the goal, or did you exceed it, or were you below it? And then what's wrong? And then how can we work on this together? Other things that managers need to know is problems. So one of the big issues with these secretaries in the example we just looked at, all of these managers are giving everybody an excellent rating. If I was HR, the first thing I would say to Rob is you need to have a meeting with all of these managers to explain why they can't give an excellent rating to everybody. But instead, he didn't have that meeting. Instead, he just told the managers from now on, only half of the people can be excellent. The managers were not included in this process. A couple of other things before we move on about forms. So as I said, we need to be aware of mistakes. We have mistakes in the appraisal process, in the meeting, and we have some mistakes in the forms. So one mistake is that managers don't know the purpose. They think they are appraising people just for salary, when that's not why we need the information. Or they don't know how the form should be used. They don't know how long the form should cover. That's a big issue. When the managers are rating these secretaries, are they looking at 1 month? Are they looking at the last few weeks? Are they looking at how somebody was at the beginning of the year? That's really huge. We already talked about these definitions. What does excellent mean? What does good mean? And if the appraisers have questions, who do they ask? A lot of appraisers, and here we mean managers, if the managers have a question, they need to know that they should come to us in HR. And a lot of managers don't know that. So our job in HR, part of our job is to give managers this training on how to properly do an appraisal. There are some other issues that might come up. So as we said before, there tends to be a reliance on quantitative. Constance, why do many big companies rely on quantitative evaluations? Constance?
Sorry, I didn't listen.
I said, why do many big companies rely on quantitative evaluation methods?
Because of the number of their employees?
Sure. So because there's so many employees, a quantitative method has 2 benefits. Can anybody tell me the benefits of using quantitative methods when you have many employees?
It's fast.
What makes it fast?
And speed up the time.
Yeah, it's fast, but what makes it fast? Why is it fast?
Because numbering.
Okay, because you're just circling numbers. So that's pretty fast. And then there's another benefit. What's the other benefit? There's another benefit besides it's fast.
Is it easy to make like a ranking?
Yeah, that's the other benefit. Everybody gets a score. He's 60, she's 65, he's 73, she's 28, he's 84. Everybody just has these scores, and it's so easy to know where they are. It's deceptively easy because it doesn't really always help us. And so as we know, a lot of managers, because they don't really know what to do with these numbers, they just give everybody a grade in the middle or a little above the middle. So one problem we can fix in HR is to make sure that the manager gives supporting statements, which is the manager writes down sentences that explain why he or she gave these rankings or these numbers. Another big problem. Appraisers don't discuss the form with the employees. I don't know if you've ever had an appraisal or an evaluation by someone besides a teacher, but a good appraisal, has anybody been appraised at work? Not at school? No? So if you get a good appraisal, the manager would sit down with you, and let's say I'm your manager. Now, maybe I fill out this form and then I sit down and say, okay, Bella, I have your appraisal here. This was filled out by the manager. And now the manager is going to sit down with you and talk about it. Now, that's really, really important. So you understand your appraisal should not be a secret to you. Because if we didn't review it, you and the manager, then the review is kind of useless. Why? Bella, why would we say the review is useless? You still have a score that the manager gave you. Isn't that useful? Isn't that what we want to know? We want to know your performance. And now you have a score. You got an 86. Great. Congratulations. Now we know your performance.
But why do we want to know the performance? Isn't it to make sure if there is a space to improve or get better? So if that is the point, then we have to discuss.
Sure. If you get a score, you get an 86 or a 95 or whatever score you get, did you achieve your objectives? And if the manager doesn't sit down with you, what are your objectives next time? Is your objective just to get an 86 again? Or to get an 87 next time? Is it just about a number? Because a company isn't a number. A school isn't a number. Companies have goals. So that's one thing. And it's also very important for you to understand why you got the number. So if I gave you all grades and then I refuse to talk with you, the problem is it's not that you don't understand the grade, you don't understand why you got the grade. So I could say, okay, you got a grade of 88. And the objective for next time is you should do this. But if you don't understand why you got an 88, maybe it was just an accident, a lucky mistake. So it's important to also discuss this with the employees. Sometimes,
David,
yeah.
Sorry, but this is a manager role, not the HR.
Correct. Okay. It's our job to teach the managers to do this. Sometimes the manager will discuss the form, but then he doesn't write it. So let's say I sit down with Bella, I say, Bella, here's your evaluation form. So here's the first thing, it's about, did you come on time? And here's the second thing, it's about your work quality. And here's the third thing, it's about satisfaction. I have all of these things, but I actually didn't circle the numbers yet. Well, then Bella doesn't know her score, and that's useless. You need to know what score you got and why. Sometimes another problem is there's no meeting. I say, Bella, here's your evaluation, please sign it. You don't even know what you're signing. Another is when the manager changes what's on the form. So we discuss it, I circled it, you sign your name, and then when you leave, I make changes. That's a problem too. So we want to make sure everything is fair. We already talked about clarifying the standards. We want to make sure we know what satisfactory means or what excellent means. We could use like bars for that, or we can just sit down and have a meeting with the managers to explain to them. What we don't want to do is just have something like, I gave you the example of what they use in many schools where it just says, excellent means submitted work on time and worked without assistance and worked on their own. It doesn't tell you anything. Other issues, attractiveness. Hey, Rodrigo, you there?
Yes.
Do you know someone who is very physically attractive? Not going to ask you who.
Yeah.
Do their looks affect how people, I won't say your, but do their looks affect how people appraise them, do you think?
Yeah, probably, yes.
Probably. Has anybody ever had your looks affect how you were appraised? Oh, you guys haven't been appraised. What do you think? Does it matter, Constance, how people look?
Yes.
Why?
At work also, because it changed the opinion you have on them.
But why?
Like you can have.
If I'm appraising you as a secretary on your work, why would it change my opinion?
The image I'm gonna give, like of myself, it's gonna count in your, like it's, even if it's subjective, it's gonna count anyway.
Yeah, but you just keep telling me that it's important. I agree with you. I'm asking why. Christine, why does it matter?
Well, in my opinion, it doesn't matter, but I don't know, maybe it matters.
But do you agree then that people who are physically attractive get appraised better?
I agree that yeah, it does happen, and I don't agree with. I don't think it should happen.
I agree.
But I think this is like a beauty standard, you know.
Yeah.
Like you want to be with this because of TV, because the advertisements, because the propaganda everywhere, beautiful people and this kind of thing. Our mind is biased, you know.
Okay.
Because I think it's nice to work
mates.
around. It's nice to work around good-looking people and work with them.
That's an interesting point. Okay, so there's something about being around pretty people, or people who dress well, or people who smell good, or all this, anything tactile, right? It's somebody who wears beautiful clothes or somebody who always smells like lavender or something. It can be nice to the senses. That is a possible actual reason. Jonathan, what were you going to say?
I'm just going to say it's physical attraction. Like it's pretty basic human stuff.
Okay, so you want this person to like you, right? What we call
so,
people pleasing, right? So you might, and that happens all the time when someone might ask you for a favor, and whether or not you immediately say yes, you might base it on something that you're not glad that you did that, but afterwards you think, why did I say that? Oh, it's because this person is very attractive. And often it doesn't matter. You know, an example of this in psychology is it has to do with wealth also. We tend to behave differently around people who we know are very wealthy. And there was one experiment, I think I didn't tell this class, I told another class. There was an experiment in a parking lot where they would have somebody they would measure how quickly did somebody pull their car out to leave if the car waiting for them to get in was very expensive. So there's a very expensive car, like a Rolls Royce, driving around a parking lot looking for a space. And they want to measure how quickly does the person leave the space to let the Rolls Royce go in. And would it be different if it was a cheap car driving around? And what they found is that if the car is like an expensive car, then people will pull out very quickly and leave, because we have a natural deference to people we consider to be higher than us.
They did a study. Oh, sorry. Was I interrupting you?
No.
I thought you were done. They did a study where they had people jaywalking in suits, and then they had people jaywalking in normal clothes. And people were more likely to follow the people jaywalking in suits than in, like, I don't know, a hoodie or something.
Yeah, sure. Yep, all that stuff really matters. What they discovered, another interesting thing in that parking lot, they discovered if the person who was waiting to leave had the nicer car, they would back out very slowly. If there was a cheap car waiting for them, then those people would slowly adjust their mirror, maybe choose some music, because they had the status, right? Looks have a lot to do with status. So in general, these things matter. And part of the reason they matter is because of the halo effect, right? The halo effect says that when someone has one good quality, it could be for bad also, but usually it's for good. When one person has one good quality, and when we say good, I do not mean ethics. I do not mean morals. I mean one desirable quality. For example, they're very rich or they're very beautiful. So if one man is extremely handsome, it might affect how they are rated on things that have nothing to do with looks. If someone is very handsome, they might be rated better for customer satisfaction or being on time or salesmanship or all kinds of different things. And that is if someone is attractive. It's also if someone is rich. It could also be, as Jonathan said, how someone dresses. I have friends in Shanghai who always wore, they would have like one or two nice suits, and they didn't need them. They worked at a kindergarten, but they always wore their suits going out because it totally affected how people behaved around them. And it's just a halo effect. This also does work for negative qualities. For example, if somebody is unfriendly, they might be rated bad for lots of different qualities that are not related to unfriendliness. This idea that one characteristic can affect all characteristics. We also talked already about what's called the central tendency, the tendency for managers to just rate everybody either in the middle or high or something like that. Okay, the next thing is in HR, we need to make sure that we prepare managers for this meeting with the employees. So we've already taught the managers how to use the forms. We've already taught the managers about counseling and coaching. Now, the last thing for us to do is to teach managers, how do you have an effective meeting? So for one, is the employee's KSAO matched with the employee's position? Before the meeting, a manager needs to make sure that's true. Please remind me, Chloe, what is a KSAO?
It's the skills and abilities.
Sure. Knowledge, skills, abilities, other. So we want to make sure when the manager sits down, they can immediately know. They already maybe have the job description, the job specification, the job analysis, the competency model, the requirements matrix. They have all of these things ready. So they know the match between the position and the KSAO. We also need to know the intangible factors. What are intangible factors? Well, things like management style or personality. So is this employee suitable? Are they fitting? Are they a good match or a good fit with their manager's management style? Does the employee have a clear understanding of the duties and responsibilities? Has the evaluator, the manager, worked with the employee for at least 3 months? If they haven't, they probably don't know the employee. And has the employee been given enough instructions? So before, and this is especially if the appraisal is negative. If the manager is about to tell the employee that they did a bad job recently, the manager's really got to be ready for that kind of stuff. So let's say that we are HR, and we're getting a manager ready to give bad news to this guy, Nick. The manager is about to have an evaluation meeting with Nick to discuss his recent bad performance. So we want to make sure first, we're going to tell John, the manager, first, you need to make sure you looked at the employee's work record. You can't just tell someone recently you did a bad job. You need to have very clear evidence as to why. You need to consider what improvements are needed. You can't just tell an employee you did a bad job. You need to already know how you would like them to improve. And yeah, as I said, how they'll improve, not just what, but also how. John, the manager, should think about what is the reaction of Nick going to be. If I tell Nick, you've been late and you made mistakes on this report and we're not happy with your recent performance, how do we think Nick's going to feel? What do we think Nick might do? We need to be ready for that. Also, we should definitely give Nick several days to prepare for this interview. You never want to say, hey, Nick, today at 3 o'clock, we're having an evaluation. You got to give them time to prepare. And probably we should ask Nick to prepare a self-evaluation. Now, this sounds more like what Chandra was saying with the critical incident, because we can't use critical incident because this incident has already happened, but we can definitely ask Nick to prepare a self-evaluation where he first says how he thinks he's doing. And then we give that to the manager. The manager looks at that, then thinks about, well, what do I think Nick needs to improve? Well, how could he do that? When I tell this to Nick, how is Nick going to react maybe? Get all these things ready. And then the manager is much better prepared for the appraisal interview. So after the appraisal, after this meeting happens, it ends with the manager and the employee creating a plan to fix any of the weaknesses, to reinforce any of the strengths. As I said, you want to give the employee at least several days notice. You always want to compare your performance to the standards, right? What is the goal? What is the objective? What is the benchmark? You always want to do this in a private place. And then I have a bunch of other stuff on the schedule that talks about, or on the PPT that talks about the appraisal interview, but you can look at these things. It's not, I'm not going to test you on these. These are just examples. Positive body language is something we really do need to teach managers also. So we can't really do this activity over Zoom the same way, but whether, because you couldn't really tell if somebody's leaning forwards. How can we use body language on Zoom? I mean, that's an interesting question. What do you think, Nicola? Is there any way to use effective body language on Zoom?
Yeah, you can see if the person behind of the camera is like interesting, but if maybe people are sleeping or something like this, so it shows like it's not interesting, the lecture. Sometimes people react. A friend of my wife said for his first meeting the Zoom, a guy was talking something and he was like this, oh my God, claiming about, and his boss said, do you want to do some comment? So,
I just experienced that in one of my classes today. I was made a comment and there's a girl who did not agree and she didn't say anything, but she went, and I really wanted to say, if you disagree with my comment, you can just say so, but okay.
Yeah.
Other things in
recently
Zoom.
fired somebody for touching himself online. Just want to say that in a Zoom call. So that happens as well.
You said that you're just saying that this does happen.
Oh, it was a news thing. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's also people go to the bathroom and they forget to turn their microphone off, and all those kind of things happen. That is not what I would call positive body language, no matter how it was intended. One thing I can tell you as a teacher who does teach on Zoom is I can tell generally if you are surfing the net. Now, one of the weird things with Zoom is they haven't fixed optics yet. So, right now it doesn't look like I'm looking at you. Maybe it looks like I'm looking somewhere else because I'm looking at my picture of me, right? I'm not looking at the camera, because if I look at the camera, then I can't see any of you. And obviously computers aren't designed for that yet. But if you're surfing the net, generally it's easy to see that. And I don't know if you guys would know this, but it's because of your eye movement. You can on Zoom see someone's pupil. So it's very interesting on Zoom. On Zoom, you can see nods, you can see smiles, but you can't see micro signals. Anybody know what's a micro signal?
The eye movement?
Like a twitch?
It's like a twitch, but it's unconscious, but not reflexive. A twitch is a reflex. You don't control your twitches. You do control your micro signals. So it would be the difference, for example, between me doing this and me doing this. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but you probably can.
So, sorry, could you repeat that?
Now I'm laughing. I'll try again. Ready? It's the difference between, wait, let me stop sharing. It's better, okay. It's the difference between, I can't do that, I'm laughing now. Like between, that and this. That would be a micro signal. And that should be clear enough because that's a pretty big one. That's trying to turn just the corners of your mouth up very slightly. And it indicates that someone is going to start smiling, but hasn't yet. There are hundreds of muscles in the human face. Some are just around the eyes, like the subtlety of anger. There's a micro signal when somebody isn't angry yet, but they're starting to disagree with you, where the only part of their face that moves is the corners of the eyes. It just slightly narrows. It's so subtle. But there's all kinds of micro signals that we can't really see, because while this to the human eye looks very good, that we can see each other, it's very flat. And micro signals tend to really be 3D. This is such a 2D flat image that you lose a lot. What you gain, however, is look at each other's boxes. How close would you really need to be standing to someone to see their head this big? We don't think about it on the computer, but sometimes, people are on the computer. You would never be this close to me. That would be like you right here. You'd never be there. But if you were that close to somebody, what you could see is you could see their eyes moving around. And when they're reading or scrolling is more of a top to bottom, left to right, top to bottom. And you can see it real clearly. So do be aware of that. Of course, it's easy to see if someone is checking their phone generally, but you can actually see if somebody's using the computer. So, and I don't stop you because I am getting a master's and I use my computer while my teachers are teaching. And I don't know how we're all going to go back to education without surfing Wikipedia or Amazon while class is happening. I don't know how we're going to do it. It's going to be hard for a week. When you get back to class and you're not able to just doom scroll through whatever you're scrolling. I'm usually scrolling Reddit. What are you scrolling? Jody, what are you scrolling?
Me?
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, you're clearly
I just
scrolling
open-
something. What are you looking at?
I just open Google Translate. I want to translate something.
No, I mean
Because I don't know the
generally.
words.
I don't mean right now. Rod-
Generally?
yeah.
Uh,
Don't
I
say
don't know,
porn.
maybe
Don't
like
say
news.
porn. News, fine. What are you
Yes.
scrolling? Rodrigo, you're scrolling all the time. What are you scrolling?
Facebook. Well, not during class, but
Facebook. Yeah, right. Not everybody is. Some people are. I mean, I like your cameras on. I don't really care if you're scrolling. It's not a big deal to me. I mean, sometimes it's obvious that people didn't catch what was said, but it's just the way Zoom is right now. You can't ask people to do nothing. Okay, so body language really is critical. Anything else I wanted to say about that? Oh, the other thing is distance matters so much in face-to-face. The idea of leaning towards somebody, but I'm leaning towards you now and you can't really tell. Like if I go from here and I'm leaning in this whole time, if we were face-to-face, there would be all kinds of micro signals happening that you're able to pick up on, but you just can't see them over Zoom. Zoom is really, really interesting from a sort of a psychological standpoint for that reason. Very interesting.
But I think if you do something like point out, you know, it's still strong, you know.
Well, sure.
Don't do it. Let something like this.
But a lot of these are called gesticulations. I gesticulate all the time, which means I use my hands to talk, right? But right now, I'm using my hands to talk and you can't see me. I would have to put my hands up. Who does this? Who talks in their hands like
this? You have
this?
to become Italian.
I would have to keep the camera down here or something to be able to, it's just not, doesn't work, you know? But these are all things
wide angle lens, like a professional camera setup, and then you'll have your face and your body in a compact format.
That's the last thing I want.
Above and beyond on the Zoom teaching stuff.
Yeah, right. Well, someday we'll get to holographic teaching. We do know, however, as I said, if you are giving a manager, if a manager is giving negative feedback, it's very common for the employee to become defensive. So let's make sure we understand that. What does that mean? What does it mean to become defensive, Bella?
Well, I'm not sure how to explain it. He or she will try to like come up with some reasons and act like you are actually offending him or her.
Okay, that's a good way to say it.
With something that's not true.
Sure. So there are different kinds of defensiveness. We're not going to get into that in this class. That is more psychology. But defensiveness generally is reasons. If the manager, John, said to Nick, you've been late recently and the quality of your report is not good. And if Nick says, hey, my child is sick, that's clearly a defense. It's a reason that things have been bad recently. This is normal. People defend when attacked. It is absolutely normal. And the problem is a lot of managers aren't trained in this. So then if Nick said that, maybe the manager would say, hey, man, stop yelling at me. I'm the manager. Now they have a fight. Now they're in conflict. Because the manager wasn't ready to know, of course Nick's going to do that. That's what people do. It's absolutely normal behavior. Now, if the manager said, I don't want to hear excuses, what's happening is he's attacking Nick's defense. And that's a huge problem. Now, you hear managers say that all the time, at least in the movies or on TV. I don't want to hear excuses. That is a terrible thing for a manager to say. If the manager said, I don't want you to be late and I don't want errors in the report, That makes sense. But to say I don't want to hear excuses isn't a fair thing, because excuses aren't always bad. They're just reasons why something happened. The manager should always be searching for the reasons why something happened. To say I don't want to know why this happened is terrible behavior on a manager's part. A manager should postpone. Now, you would think of this as putting something off, but in fact, if you get into a conflict with your employer, one of the best things the manager can do is say, we need to cool down. This is not the time for us to have this discussion. That's what managers do. You know, managers are able to walk away because it doesn't matter if you're upset. I have my job, and my job is not to fight with you. My job is to manage you effectively. There is something that's more modern these days called gaslighting, which doesn't really happen as much at work, but it is relevant to mention. Anybody know what is gaslighting? That's a common phrase these days. No, to gaslight is to make someone feel like they are wrong, not you. Another way to say this would be to say, to question their reality. So let's say that I am your manager, and I go to Constance, and I say, Constance, you know, recently the quality of your work hasn't been as good. What if Constance says to me, David, your standards have gone crazy. You expect so much more than you used to. Now, what she's doing is she's trying to turn the table so that instead of me accusing her of something, she's making me question my own behavior. And then I have to think, wait a minute, did my standards change? Maybe she's right. Maybe my version of reality is wrong. That's called gaslighting. And it's also something that it's very manipulative, but it's certainly something that employees might do. Anything else I want to say? Okay, one more big thing. So this just gets us, let's get back to where we were at the beginning, right? Performance management. This is a big topic, so let's make sure we're back at the beginning. Performance management is a process, a continuous process. It's not once a year, it's not once every 6 months, it's continuous. It involves constantly coaching and training the managers to be better at coaching and to be better at counseling and to be better at giving these evaluations. And the reason for this process is to generally align the performance of the employees with the organization's goals. Okay, that's generally what we're talking about. Management is not the same thing as appraisal. Appraisal is just one part of this process. Okay, performance management is not a meeting once or twice a year. Performance management is continuous. Management is about goals. Appraisals are not always about goals, you know, but management is. It's about alignment of goals. Management involves alignment. So continuous, goals, and alignment are really these key ideas for performance management. One last thing is the idea of importance to the organization. So let's say that I'm appraising my employees, and I'm appraising Christine, and I'm appraising Chloe, and I'm appraising Bella and Nicola. I'm appraising these people, and Christine is the head of research and development for our company, and Chloe is one of the marketing assistants, and Bella is an editor, and Nicola is the senior editor. So we have all these different jobs. If I appraise you on how you did, and all of you get a 75, are those 75s all equal? Is Christine, who is the head of research and development for our pharmaceutical company, Is her 75 as important as Chloe, who's a marketing intern's 75? No, Christine, why not?
Well, because it's like a different job, and like the job entails, it's like just different what you
Yeah,
what you
but we already talked about things like that. We already talked about making sure that we've looked at your KSAOs and all of this. You, Christine, got a 75 compared to your job. And Chloe got a 75 compared to her job. So yeah, we did that. There's no question about that. I'm not just saying you're all 75 out of nothing. You know, I'm talking about compared to your job. But still, Chloe, is there a difference? You got a 75 out of 100 as a marketing intern, and Christine got a 75 out of 100 as the head of research and development. What's the difference?
The difference is that Christine is gonna have way more responsibility than I do have now, since the job position is not the same. You don't have the same duties. You don't have the same amount of work. You don't have the same employees or team around you.
So Chloe, does our company need you? Can we replace you?
As an intern, yes.
Yeah, right? We can replace you. You are non-essential. Can we just tomorrow get a new intern? Maybe.
Yeah.
And if it takes us 3 days or a week to get an intern, okay. Can we tomorrow replace the head of research and development?
Not sure.
No, they are mission critical. We need them because you have different levels of value to the organization. So even though this whole class, we've talked about performance and how to effectively evaluate performance, what we haven't talked about is this other idea of value. Not everybody has the same value, and that seems like it's very unfair to say, but of course, this is a business. We're not writing a constitution for a country, we're running a business. And people are not all replaceable in the same way. So what we would generally have, this is called a role assessment matrix. And it would look kind of like this. This is an example of 4 by 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 times 1, 2, 3, 4. It could be 6 by 6, it could be 6 by 4, it could be whatever, doesn't matter. This just happens to be 4 by 4. It depends what your ratings are. So we know everybody got, you know, a 75, they all got a high rating of 75. That doesn't mean each person is mission critical. Only one person was mission critical. You know, one person was non-essential. So if we have bonuses, we can't just give bonuses to everybody who scored above a 90. We also have to match their value to the organization. And that should be that clear.
Who make this range? I mean,
HR.
Who decides who's mission
HR.
critical? HR.
Yeah. So for people who are mission critical or core, we should have succession planning. If Chloe decides to quit today, okay, we'll get some new interns. If Christine decides to quit in a month or something, we are going to have a huge problem. We need to already know who is going to move into her position. Have we been training people? Do we have an acceleration pool? Do we have some people? We have these cards that has all these position replacement charts. I mean, that was the beginning of recruitment, that subject.
I see. I was asking like if can be like a misunderstanding between the manager and the HR in terms of the employee. I mean,
oh, absolutely.
Christine can see Chloe as a, you know, maybe necessary.
Sure.
And the HR say, no, she's intern, she's non-essential.
You absolutely would have conflicts, especially if Christine chose Chloe and believes that Chloe has a lot of promise and thinks that Chloe's going to be really, really critical to our organization in the future. And HR says, no, she's disposable. Yeah. That could cause a lot of conflict.
Who has the last word on the table?
I mean, I think it depends. It depends on the organization, but generally HR has staff authority, not line authority. So we are HR managers. Christine is probably above us. She's a manager too. So we're equal. We don't tell managers what to do. We have staff authority. We have advisory authority. We just give advice. If the CEO wants to empower HR to do this, they could. To say, okay, in this situation, we need to get rid of some people, get rid of some of the non-essential people. They could say that. And then Christine she would have to complain to the CEO or her boss. But probably she has more power as the manager of her department. We're just making suggestions. Okay, that was a long first half, so I won't keep you guys as long nearly in the next half, but let's take a 10-minute break and then come back. Okay, so we are done now talking about evaluation. But as I said, I consider it to be a very important topic. So let's do one last exercise about it. So I just put a file I would like you to download. And I'll put you in groups, and I would just like you to go through. There are 6 different jobs, and I'd like to know which of these performance management methods you recommend for the job and why. And I'll tell you, this is an exercise you'll have to do for the final exam. Not exactly like this. You know my style, I like to write a story, but part of it will 100% be that there's going to be more than one job that you are now the HR person for in this company, and you have to figure out which evaluation style you would use and why. So take a look at this. I'll put you in groups.
You have it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
awesome.
at cleaning company. Okay, clothes person at cleaning company. Which one do we think? Clothes person at cleaning company.
The first one, I would use the weighted checklist.
Yeah, I think so too. Just a quick one, and it can. I think that one gives clear rank. Is that the rank one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also ranking.
Weighted checklist? I wouldn't say that's ranking, that's rating.
Yeah. Quantitative.
Oh, you quantitative.
Why would you use that instead of a graphic scale?
Graphic scale.
Number 4, graphic rating. I mean, graphic rating is the quickest, right? It's just a piece of paper with all of the different traits, and you just circle numbers.
Yeah. I forget this. Maybe this is better.
Senior vice president of a small consulting.
I actually agree with you. I think a weighted checklist might be better.
No, but the graphic rating, because we don't need like so many standards for this occupation. I think it's much more about the grades, you know, the rating.
But isn't a weighted checklist the same thing?
Yeah, but there's more information about it, so demands more time to make it.
Is it? I think a weighted checklist is just like a graphic rating, except it's weighted.
But there's no sense of what.
I won't keep all of your time. Go on to number 2.
Okay. Senior vice president of small consulting company.
Right, like growth objectives, certain percentages you want hit in a year. So that's an objective that can be met. So MBO as well. Yeah.
Which one are you talking about?
Batman.
Like
we were just talking about the financial portfolio manager.
That was
which I would consider to be MBO to be the perfect, or not the perfect, but like one of the best rating methods. Same for the salesperson at the car dealership as well, because it's very focused job, right? So you have specific objectives that you want to reach. So for the car salesperson at a car dealership, it would be a certain amount of sales per month, or maybe, or per week, or per day, or a certain amount of reoccurring customers that you want to have, or whatever. And then for the financial portfolio manager would be similar, just with his portfolio that he's managing, right? So like a certain growth percentage in the portfolio per year or something.
Maybe.
Yeah. You guys want to add to that?
What about Batman?
Yeah, what
For
about
Batman, is there only one Batman? Because if there is, then we can't compare him to anyone. We can only keep like the records of.
Maybe implement weighted checklist just to see how well he performed as a market analyst. That's good. The weighted checklist gives you a list of the statements of effective and ineffective behavior on the job.
Ouais, mais là, I don't know. Si c'est market.
Which one are you doing?
The market
recent college graduate.
Recent college graduate?
Yes.
Okay. And what were you suggesting?
A weighted checklist.
Okay, why?
Because I don't think he should, it depends. I mean, if he's being compared to anyone, maybe not this one, but if it's only just to see how well he performed as a market analyst and hoping for a promotion, then I think it's the best one since it like.
Well, then why not graphic rating?
Because we already used that one for another one.
Well, who said you can't repeat them? You can use a graphic rating for every single one if you wanted. This isn't some exercise where you have to use a different one for each. Or maybe I should have said that. Okay.
Well, I think they're both good. They pretty much look the same to me, except that you have the weight, which is more important than just having 3 different levels.
What about the next one? Financial portfolio manager.
Maybe MBO.
I think that's reasonable.
What's the next one? Batman. Batman, I think I'd do a 360 feedback for the people he saves.
I don't know. All of those criminals he put in jail are going to give him a very bad rating.
Oh, that's true.
Okay, good.
I'll have to go back.
Okay, so let me start by saying there is not a right answer for each one. There's a variety of answers that I would accept, and it's all about the logic you use. So the first one, clothes presser at a cleaning company. What would you use for that, Jody?
I choose the MBO one.
MBO for a clothes presser. Why?
Yeah, like how many job that he has done. I mean, like the work, how many clothes that he can handle with the objectives.
Well, but if that's true, couldn't you just do a graphic rating where you just, how did they do a lot of clothes and you just circle?
The graphic rating can be because like you can see from the quantity that you do this.
Okay, so you'd be rating them only on the number of clothes they do.
Yeah.
Anybody have another thought?
Also said weighted checklist.
A weighted checklist. Why a weighted checklist?
Because it's more broad and more, you can establish more standards, not only how many clothes did the person did in a day. So it's better to evaluate the global work.
Now, I think that's logical too. I mean, I kind of agree because I think the problem, Jody, with an MBO is it requires that the managers sit down and have a discussion with each one of these employees. Now, that has 2 problems. One, the managers need to be trained to do that. And we're talking about a clothes cleaning company. So think of the Carter Cleaning Company. Are those managers highly trained managers? Not really. They're managers of a clothes pressing company, but if you want to sit and talk to them about all of these things we've said, how to use an appraisal form and how to do coaching and counseling, and I mean, they're not really that kind of manager. That's one problem. The other problem is that the employees at this company, they come and go. So to sit down and have a meeting with every employee when the objective, I mean, I kind of agree with Chloe. There's other things that matter besides just quantity. For example, friendliness, coming on time, being dressed appropriately. There's just a bunch of things we're looking at. Now, Chloe, though, I think, because another group said weighted checklist too, we need to be clear on the difference between a weighted checklist and a graphic rating model. And it sounds like you guys are kind of forgetting the difference between those two. So a graphic rating model is a piece of paper that has lots of different categories, right? They did a lot of work, they came on time, they were productive, they were efficient, they were friendly. And for all of these different categories on one piece of paper, you can circle different numbers very fast, right? What's the difference between that and a weighted checklist? Can someone tell me the difference?
I think the graph rating is there are different level of importance for each category.
Well, the graphic rating model has, let's say each category has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is the best, 1 is the worst.
Mm-hmm.
So it says like employee was very efficient, and you circle a 4.
Fine.
It says employee was on time, you circle a 3. It says employee was friendly, you circle a 5. Whatever, you're just circling 5. Now the weighted checklist looks exactly the same. It's still a piece of paper. It's still got all of these same categories. It still has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's the difference between these two pieces of paper?
Maybe for the weighted checklist, it has a statement of like what is good or bad, like what is good and bad. So maybe managers receive the point without knowing the like score, so it can be more fair.
Okay, so that's the key idea. Anais?
Yes.
Yes, what did Chandra just say?
I can't recall, but I do recall what you said last.
Well, I guess that's something, although kind of an insult to Chandra, I feel like. Remember what I said, but not her. The point is, and I do need you guys to know this because it really sounds like you're not getting it, is the difference between the weighted checklist and the graphic rating model. They are exactly the same, except one is weighted. What that means is with the weighted checklist, the manager doesn't know which categories are important. With the graphic rating model, the manager knows they're all equal. Was the employee efficient? You circle 5. Was the employee friendly? You circle 4. That's a 5 out of 5. That's a 4 out of 5. They're all out of 5. They're all equal. On a weighted checklist, some of those categories are really important, and the manager doesn't know. Now, I think a weighted checklist, as I said in the first group, I think that would be really good for the close presser. And the reason is they have a lot of managers who come and go. Their managers are not very experienced. If you want a manager to use a graphic model where they're just circling numbers, the manager has to know how important is efficiency, how important is being on time, how important are these things. If there's a brand new manager, and the other thing is, in these cleaning companies, I'm sure that they get to know each other, and there is some temptation for the manager to give a very good rating to their friends. So it would be good to take that bias away from the manager so that they have 20 categories to circle, only 10 of those matter. But the manager doesn't know that. So they can't really cheat because they can't give their friends 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. They can't do that. And they don't know which ones are really important. So weighted checklist, graphic rating model, almost exactly the same. The difference is the weight. Rodrigo, what is the difference between the weighted checklist and the graphic rating model?
The weighted checklist is weighted. It has a ranking from 1 to 5.
They both have a ranking from 1 to 5.
I mean, the graphic one doesn't have like the manager doesn't know what are the values. It's just like a number out of 5 or a number out of something.
Oh God, you don't understand. You're almost saying what I said, but you clearly don't understand. Christine, can you explain this?
So the weighted checklist, the managers don't know the weight of specific statements, and so they can mark 1 to 5. But 5 is not necessarily the highest rating or highest whatever it is for that statement.
Wait, 5 is the highest.
But isn't it like the managers don't know what's the weight for each specific sentence, like the statement?
Yes, it's the weight. Okay.
Yeah, so 5 doesn't have to be the highest, right?
No, 5 is definitely the highest.
It's like
Trying to
If I-
make this clear.
But then at the end, they will multiply that 5 with some
Yes.
number. And that number we don't know.
yes.
Okay. Okay, imagine that the evaluation kind of looks like this. Terrible, but can you see it's question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4, question 5. And for each of these, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Rodrigo, are you seeing this? Okay. So now let's say question 1 is about efficiency. So, okay, you circle a 4. And question 2 is about being friendly. And question 3 is about being punctual and on time. And, you know, all of these questions are about different behaviors. But what you don't know, Rodrigo, so this right now would be a graphic rating model. But what you don't know, Rodrigo, is secretly, each of these questions has different importance. Question 1 is actually really important. That's worth a 10. Question 2 is not as important. It's only worth a 3. Question 3 is worth a 7. Question 4 is 5. Question 5 doesn't even matter. It's worth 1 point. And you, Rodrigo, are the manager. You don't know these numbers. I'm in HR, I know them. So you're circling what you think for the employee, you know, 4, 3, 4, 3, 5, 5, whatever. You're circling for the employee. But then when you're done, you don't know this, but I'm going to multiply those numbers by this number on the side. So actually question 1, you didn't know that, but question 1 is super important, but you didn't know. So you were just being honest, because once I explained it to you, there's no reason that you shouldn't be honest, because you don't know what the multiplication is anyway. Question 5 is almost has no value, but you don't know that either. Now, the benefit of using this weighted checklist is that for a manager who doesn't really understand, or a manager who has bias, those are the benefits of using this. Because using the normal checklist, you'd have to be a pretty good manager to understand what is important.
So like the graphic rating, there is no like which question is important. So all are equal, right?
Yeah. Okay, what about number 2, the vice president, senior vice president of a small consulting company? What do you think? What do you think, Camila? Senior vice president of a small consulting company.
I would probably still use the graphic scale, graphic rating.
Why?
Because then it could be measured on numbers.
Why do we need numbers? Do you think this small consulting company has 150 senior vice presidents?
No.
Not really. They might have 2 or 3. I don't know. I'm not sure I need numbers on this. Anybody else have a thought?
MBO or self-evaluation?
Maybe.
I was thinking something like an essay evaluation.
Maybe. I think an essay is possible. MBO is possible. Self-evaluation, maybe. I might also say critical incident. Something that's probably more qualitative. In a small company, especially with somebody at a high level, we really want to know what are the decisions that are challenging and how did they handle those decisions? Just saying this guy, You know, his number is 86. That doesn't really tell me anything. I want to really know in HR what's going on his day-to-day basis. Now, if you want to say, I think it should be essay because the manager should evaluate him, because maybe this vice president someday could become president. That's fine. If you want to say he should evaluate himself or do critical incident method because it's a small company, they already know if he's really good or bad. He'll be honest for that reason. That's fine too. You know, I just want to know your logic. But, you know, anything that's small, there's really no need for numbers. Numbers are kind of something we use in bigger companies. What about the third one, the most experienced salesperson at a car dealership? Chloe, what do you think?
I would say the essay, maybe the essay evaluation, maybe. And
why? Why would you write an essay about a car dealer?
Because he's supposed to be a salesperson, so he's supposed to know how to talk to people, I guess.
Okay.
Maybe.
I mean, if we're writing essays, then probably as the manager, you're asking the manager to write essays for every salesperson at this car dealership. That might be a lot of people.
On here, it says the most experienced one.
Yeah, but you can't just have him have an essay and everybody else has something else. That would be unfair. But okay. I mean, I think if I was a salesperson, but I wasn't the most experienced, I might be upset that you just did a circle thing for me, but you did an essay for him. Maybe. Bella, what do you think for the most experienced salesperson?
I think maybe something more quantitative. It can be, well, maybe the graphic rating or the bars, maybe.
Why?
Because, well, they also assign numbers to these people, but
yeah, but why do you think he needs numbers?
Because there are so many people working in sales, maybe in a car dealership or.
Okay, so
I thought maybe like a paired comparison method, since we're looking for like who's the best employee. So it allows you to like find you know, who is the best compared to the other ones.
I mean, I think the difference between Bella and Anais would have to do with how many salespeople are they. And I think that's fine. You know, if Bella's right and there's 200 salespeople, doing a paired comparison is not reasonable. It would take forever. If there's only 20 people, if it's small, I think ranking is probably better. I think ranking is better for something like this if it's small, because we want to know where people, as a salesperson, maybe I want to know, is he number 1? Is he number 10? Where is he in these salespeople?
Maybe we can use alternation ranking method then, right?
Maybe. Paired comparison, maybe, except the problem with paired comparison is what I really care about potentially are his sales. Is he efficient? Is he productive? Is he effective? Blah, blah, blah. Is he selling cars? You know, so this is a job that doesn't have a whole variety of skill sets. We're really rating him on the number of cars he sold. So this is a problem with doing a graphic rating scale is, oh, he scored high on friendliness and coming on time. Did he sell cars? You know, that's what we want to know. So I might just put a ranking. Next one, recent college grad employed as a market analyst hoping to become account manager. Rodrigo, what do you think?
I'm not sure, sir. I didn't get to
Jody, what do you think?
For this one, I'm not sure also.
Okay, Nicola, what do you think?
when we discuss, we came up with a 360 100-degree because we can have much more information about this young guy. You know,
Okay.
it's a kind of his promotion. But I make a note here about the weighted checklist is good for new managers, but I'm not sure why I have this note here.
That would only be true if this college grad's manager was new.
Like new, very new in the company.
If the manager of his department was new, we don't know that. We just know he's a recent college graduate. We don't know anything about his manager. I think 360, I like your logic. I think that's very true. I think it just depends on the size of the company. But obviously, we're talking about some sort of financial company. So I think 360 would be a good choice. I would not really want to use anything too qualitative. For that, I would want something quantitative. So you guys are kind of, here's a problem overall. You guys are selecting which one you think would be good, but I would say you need to back up a step and start by saying, I would choose qualitative, or I would choose quantitative, or I would choose ranking because. So you guys are telling me I would choose weighted checklist, or I would choose bars, or I would choose, but I would take a step back and say, I would choose quantitative because I believe this is a big company. Now, there are three possibilities for quantitative. There's forced choice, there's graphic rating, and there's weighted. I would choose weighted because. That's the way I want this answered. I want to know which type you would choose. For a recent college graduate, I would choose quantitative because he's not really part of the company yet, unless it's a very small company. Then I would choose 360-degree or essay. If it's a very small company and we're really considering, do we want to bring this guy into our 5-person company? But if it's a big firm like Bear Stearns or Lehman Brothers or some really big financial place, we don't need an essay on every person. We don't, we just need numbers. Financial portfolio manager at a traditional bank. So Jonathan, quantitative, qualitative, or ranking, do you think?
Personally, I think it should be quantitative, sorry. Quantitative.
Like using numbers, why?
Yeah, well, because first of all, the subject of his job is numbers, right? So
I would agree.
Yeah, so what we would want for him to achieve is a certain percentage in growth or something else, right? So I would personally go with MBO, set certain markers that he should achieve for his portfolio.
I think
go from there. Yeah.
I think it depends on the size of the bank and his level in the bank, but I would say MBO or graphic weighting scale. The other thing is this is a traditional business, which means to me, we're not writing essays about each other. That's pretty modern. Critical incident methods, anything qualitative is pretty modern. Traditional, we're talking about numbers. So, okay, good. Batman, what would you use for Batman?
Self-evaluation.
Self-evaluation? Batman's crazy. You can't let him evaluate himself. God only knows what he's going to say. Maybe.
I'm going to punch you in
How
the throat
about
if you
critical?
evaluate him.
Yeah, it's probably got to be critical incident. Although every single day this guy's got a critical incident, but something like that. Okay, great. Okay, we'll stop there for today. Next time we'll do compensation. I'll put the videos up soon. Any questions before we go? No? Camila, you are the new host. Congratulations. Okay, I will see you guys if there's no questions next week. If you have any questions, just WeChat or email. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.